Hello, everyone! Whoop, 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 whoop. Xeshire the cat on the scene. With the latter part of today's trial. Let's continue on, shall we? The court will now reconvene for the trial of Miss Lana Skye. Emma didn't come back. Allow me to call the next witness to the stand. The officer in charge of guarding the evidence room the day of the crime. Witness, please state your name and occupation. Me, Pardner? I'm just the same as you, wandering the trails of civilization. Occasionally helping the elderly cross intersections when needed. Yes, we get it. Oh, I know. You're a patrolman. As for my name, if you listen hard enough, you can hear the howling wind calling it out. To be exact, it's Jake Marshall, Your Honor. Howling wind? I've never heard Edgeworth described that way before. Now, Mr. Marshall, let me ask you something. You were in charge with guarding the evidence room on the day the crime took place. Is this correct? According to the papers, Pardner. What do you mean? A desperado soul is as boundless as the desert sands. No paper can sum it up. Maybe it's best we get on with this quickly. Please share with us your testimony on the day of the crime. In plain old English. Day of the crime. My job was to keep a wary eye on that bone orchard. Said I was supposed to make rounds 3 times a day, but that ain't my style. Besides, the room's protected by 2 security systems anyway. If I remember right, I was at a street-side saloon at the time it went down. I'm just an innocent traveling man, so if you're out of ammo, it's time I hit the trail. I mean, Edgeworth kind of sounds like it fits the description of a howling wind. Remember the 4 Greek winds of Greek myth? North and south are the strongest. Yeah. I can't say I particularly care for your attitude. I can't say I care for your beard, but you don't see me complaining. Wait a minute. What do you mean by 2 security systems? I mean the security cameras and the ID card reader. I reckon every cowpoke like you knows about those. Yes, well, what about the fingerprint-activated locks on the evidence lockers? Fingerprint-activated locks? What kind of newfangled doohickeys are those? So he doesn't know about those. He's not being very helpful. He's not good with machines or with following orders. Everyone's got their weaknesses now, don't they, Mr. Prosecutor? This one seems like trouble. Meanwhile, back to the judge. It's not a bad beard. Not a bad beard. It's not a bad beard. Okay, Mr. Wright, he's all yours. Cool. Alright, Boomhauer. My job was to keep a wary eye on that there bone orchard. You know, I'm just gonna question everything again because, my God, English, please. When the Southerner doesn't understand what you're saying. How exactly did you keep an eye on the evidence room? I just made sure nothing moved in the security camera monitor. That room's so still. Every time time dies in there. I was just a caretaker. Stroke. I wasn't there. I was just a caretaker who entered the recordings. You interred them? Videos and nothing aren't that useful. When the time would come, I'd erase the tape. If nothing unusual is recorded, the tapes are to be erased every 6 hours. Every 6 hours? I thought it was every 8 hours. Each time I'd erase the tape, it felt like I was erasing a part of my life. This guy has a flair for the dramatic, but it isn't going to do him any good. So in actuality, you don't physically enter the evidence room? They said I was supposed to make rounds 3 times a day, but that ain't my style. Southerner doesn't understand what the Southerners say. Oh, boy. But you made your rounds on the day of the crime, right? Ain't you heard a word I said, Pardner? I told you, that ain't my style. I'm afraid I don't understand. Okay, information in the cases would have been changed to be accurate to the modern times. No desperado, I know. Lets the rules get in his way. desperados I know would join the police force. So, Officer Marshall, on the day of the crime? Just between you and me, I didn't set foot in the evidence room that day. Yet there was a rubber glove stuck in the victim's locker. Do you know anything about that? Sorry, partner. Can't say I do. I haven't been in that crypt in weeks. How does this guy avoid being fired? Besides, the room's protected by 2 security systems anyway. How's he get away with shaving at the thing like that? You used to be a detective, so you've used the evidence room in the past, correct? Of course. Back in the day, my old locker was a gold mine of evidence. And yet, you didn't know the fingerprint locking mechanism. Sorry, partner. I ain't that good with machines. I couldn't even tell you how a bike works. I think Gamp might be as daddy silly as it may seem. No, I can see it. That's quite, incredible. The sensors on the locker handles cannot be seen. It's well known that some detectives were unaware of their presence. Now that he mentions it, Detective Gumshoe said something like that too. At any rate, it doesn't seem that this is relevant to the crime. Can you please tell us what you were doing when the crime took place? If I remember right, I was at a street-side saloon the time it went down. Street-side saloon? What were you doing in a place like that? I was eating spaghetti. Not even Angel's steak lunches can beat the parlors of Angola Sepia pasta. You mean to tell us you abandoned your police duties to eat some noodles? Oh, well, works, Marshall. Well, that's how a bike works. A bike. You don't understand how a bike works. Not all desperados eat tacos, partner. I'm not going to touch that one. That's not what I meant. I hope this has at least taught you a lesson. That's strange. This is unusually where Edgeworth says, "Did you not want to raise this year?" I'm just an innocent traveling man, so if you're out of ammo, it's time I hit the trail. Out of ammo, Officer Marshall? That's right, partner. Or as you call it, evidence. If you plan to pin me to this crime, you about to draw. Otherwise, you're just wasting my time. My steel horse is waiting to carry me back west into the sunset. One thing seems clear. Despite being responsible for guarding the evidence room, the witness doesn't appear to have seen anything. Texans don't take orders from anyone. Everyone knows that.
Bruh.
Oh, God. Okay. Apparently, your superiors don't. Okay, I have a trump card up my sleeve, so I best keep my cool. Before I use it, though, I'd better up the ante. And a wary eye on that fallen orchard. Said I was supposed to make rounds 3 times a day, but that ain't my style. Besides, the room's protected by 2 security systems anyway. See... But that's not correct. So he just doesn't know about it. Oops. Crap. Alright, it was at a street-side saloon that when I went down. So if you're out of ammo, it's time to hit the trail. Except you're not an innocent man. Officer Marshall, doesn't it strike you as odd? That is, you being called in to testify like this. After all, you weren't in the security room at the time of the crime. And yet you dragged me down here. Explain yourself, partner. It's quite simple. You left a very large trail behind at the scene. Or to be exact, a handprint. Listen real good, partner. Like I said, I'm the caretaker of that crypt. I pay my respects. That is, I make my rounds about once a month. It's only natural my fingerprints would be in there. I only wish it were, officer. But you see, your fingerprints were covered in blood. Witness, what is the meaning of this? Your bloodstained fingerprints were at the crime scene? The blood was wiped away. However, a luminol test clearly revealed this. Well, Officer Marshall? Seems to me there ain't a person in this room with a head on his shoulders. I take it you have an explanation then, Officer Marshall? About the blood-stained fingerprints? Very well, you may begin your testimony about your fingerprints. Found at the scene of the crime. See, is that supposed to be hair or like a do-rag? I can't tell. Like I said, it's only natural my fingerprints to be in the evidence room. One of them just happened to be at the same place as the bloodstained handprint. Just happened? The murderer touched the locker where my fingerprint was by chance. The bloodstain and the fingerprint are completely unrelated. Or didn't you know the murderer wasn't wearing gloves? Did you know the murderer was wearing gloves? See? I had nothing to do with it. How would you know that? Valid, although there's no room for doubt. Life wouldn't be fun without any doubt, partner. The defense may now cross-examine the witness. This guy's hiding something. Now's my chance to prove it. Bloodstained fingerprints. It's only natural for fingers to be in the evidence room. One of them just happened to be at the same place as the bloodstained handprint. The murderer touched the locker where my fingerprint was by chance. It's completely unrelated. Or didn't you know the murderer was wearing gloves? Hold it. How do you know that? I may be a loner, but I still do my job. I keep up on the reports. There was a blood stain at the scene, though, left by the murderer. That's right. It was found in the Detective Gumshoe's locker. However, no fingerprints were detected on that handprint. Oh yeah, I think we tried that too. So that would mean the murderer wearing gloves happened to place their hand on top of Officer Marshall's fingerprint. That's the only logical conclusion. Can't let him squirm out of this one. Gotta find something, to tie Officer Marshall to the crime. It's only natural for my fingerprints to be in the evidence room. That's because you, how did you put it, pay your respects once a month? Yeah, that's right. That and one more thing. That locker happens to be mine. What? What do you mean? I mean what I said. That the locker I used when I was the detective, the locker I still use. All that's in there now, though, is a heap of broken dreams. I see. It'd be strange if my prints weren't all over that locker. Apparently, his fingerprint data was never removed from the locker programming. He must have been using the fingerprint lock all this time without ever knowing it. Huh. Are you starting to get the picture, partner? The picture? This seal of blood? In the desert, it's just food for the buzzards. There's only one reality, and that's this. The security tape. As long as my trail isn't in there, you can't say otherwise. This isn't getting us anywhere, Mr. Wright. Please consider carefully where you're going with this cross-examination. Yes, Your Honor! Now then, please continue your testimony, Officer Marshall. It's been completed. Too bad it wasn't me in that video, right, partner? Oh no, the clip has been made. Alright, I know what to do. Boom. Permission granted. Ah! Wrong clip. There we go. What do you mean by that? You want to tie me to this crime, isn't that right, partner? If so, that video is the only direct evidence you have. That video's next to useless. It's full of blind spots. Blind spots? Places you can't see. The camera's panning back and forth. The floor isn't shown. If someone was familiar with the camera's position, they could leave the room without being caught on tape. We don't have time for your speculations, Mr. Wright. Well, Mr. Wright, if you can show us evidence that the video indicates Officer Marshall was present, please do so now. Yes, there is evidence. Right at the end. Very well. Allow me to point out your mistake, Officer Marshall. Tread carefully, Mr. Wright, or you might wind up being the one making the mistake. Now then, let's have another look at the video. Show us this incriminating evidence of the witness. Jake Marshall. He just revealed that that was his locker. So it would be... There's him with the glove. There's Meekins. There. And he crosses the floor. And then... There. Bringing our attention back to the security camera is a mistake I'm afraid you'll soon forget, Officer Marshall. The days are short in Texas, and so are our tempers. Could you sum up what you have to say in 8 words or less? Very well. You can clearly be seen in this video. Exactly 8 words. Not bad, partner. The key lies in a certain locker shown in the video. I mean, he's not wrong. He's not wrong. Right there. That locker with the white cloth sticking out? That was the witnesses, I believe. Now then, let's rewind the tape a bit. Oh, the white cloth. It's gone. What's the meaning of this, Officer Marshall? When the crime took place, the white cloth wasn't there. Then it suddenly appeared. There's only one explanation. Officer Marshall, you were in the evidence room at the time of the crime. What's more, you opened your locker when the camera was turned away. Order! Order! It would seem that the only— Hold your horses! Sorry, partner, but you got the wrong man. So what if my locker was opened? That doesn't mean I'm the one who opened it. The murderer needed to hide something, so he opened a locker and stuck it in. It's not my fault he happened to choose mine. Why's everyone staring at me like I'm a wanted man? This guy isn't just playing dumb. He really doesn't know. I hate to rain on your parade, but you're the only person who can open that particular locker. Oh yeah? I call your bluff. You say I opened that locker. Now prove it. Easy. Fingerprints. Right there. Fingerprint sensor? We talked about this earlier today. The lockers can only be opened by detectives they belong to. What kind of crazy talk is this? Well, Detective Gumshoe did mention something about this. In any case, the locks aren't that obvious. There are even some people in the force that don't know about fingerprint locks. So, Sheriff, what do you have to say in 8 words or less? I only got one word for you, partner. No! Order! 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 Witness, explain yourself! If this is a joke, it's the worst joke I've ever heard. I assure you this is no joke, Officer Marshall. Now then, please tell us what you were doing in the evidence room at the time of the crime. He's chewing on jerky. Ole, please answer the question. Is he now a bullfighter? Alright, Officer Marshall. I believe we can figure out the rest from here. We can? Have a look at these floor plans. Jerky. I actually love jerky. There's no place for someone to hide in the evidence room. Yet Officer Meekins didn't see Officer Marshall. If that's so, then where was the witness? It seems Mr. Wright has an answer. That's right. The only possible conclusion. Well then, let's hear it. Where was Officer Marshall at the time of the crime? Right here. Officer Marshall was standing right there. There? But that's where the victim, Detective Goodman, was. No. Correct. Unless the man wasn't Detective Goodman. I believe the victim in the video is Officer Marshall. It was you dressed up like Detective Goodman. But that's preposterous. Officer Meekins witnessed the detective at the scene of the crime scene. When he saw the man's face, he'd know for sure. May I point out, though, that Officer Meekins did not know Detective Goodman. He also testified about when the man's reaction when confronted. When I entered the evidence room, I asked him to show his card, sir. Yes? And how did Detective Goodman respond? He suddenly pulled a knife on me. Something about the officer's story puzzled me. If the man had his ID card, why didn't he just show it? Yes, he would have needed it to enter the evidence room, so he must have been carrying it. The answer is simple. He couldn't show it. Not to mention, Marshall... Oh, that's a bad pun. Marshall would be the only person who could get in. As you see, Detective Goodman's picture is on the ID card. Oh, I get it. If he showed that, his cover would have been blown. Officer Meekins would have realized the man wasn't Detective Goodman. Do you have anything to say to this, Officer Marshall? You've got quite an imagination, partner. We got a term for that. It's called circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial evidence? He's still denying it. You're gonna have to do better than that to break a detective. Unless you have hard evidence proving I was dressed up as the victim. I can't say I particularly care for your uncooperative disposition. I can't say I care for your beard, but you don't see me complaining. Excuse you, that beard is fabulous and deserves respect. Well, Mr. Wright, do you have any evidence that proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that Officer Marshall dressed up as the victim? Well, who am I kidding? I don't have anything like that. I can see the fear in your eyes, partner. Seems you're the one who couldn't take the desert heat. This can't be happening. It's so obvious he's the one. What can I do? It seems your lack of experience has finally been exposed. I'll pass on to you what someone told me when I was starting out. When you've run into a well with no place to go, return to the basics. The basics? For me, that would be what Mia used to tell me. Phoenix, try thinking outside the box. I shouldn't look for proof that Officer Marshall was in disguise. But rather, I should look for evidence that came about because he was in disguise. Why do you think this locker was open in the first place? What do you mean? There's no reason for Officer Marshall to open his locker at the time of the crime. Yet he did, despite the chance it might be discovered as later as it has been. Which means he didn't originally plan to open his locker. According to the defense's argument, Officer Jake Marshall dressed up as Detective Goodman at the scene of the crime. Then after the crime was committed, He opened his own locker for some unknown reason. The fact that a white cloth is sticking out of the locker seems to indicate that he opened it in order to put the cloth inside. So what exactly is this piece of cloth? Perhaps the video is the key to all our unanswered questions. I don't have any evidence, so this video is my only shot. Very well. Let's take yet another look at the security tape. After committing the crime, the witness has opened the locker to put away a white cloth. This shows why the witness had to open his locker. Oh, this music again! It would have had something to do with Meekins. Courtrooms in a nutshell, lazy substitute edition. Hold on. And then there he's suddenly down again. Oh, wait. He would have gotten the... At some point... during the scuffle. The blood dripped on the cloth. There! The jacket! For some reason, you disguise yourself as Detective Goodman and enter the evidence room, though I don't know to what end. Yet. However, something unexpected happened. Officer Meekins barged in on you. When asked to show your ID, you pulled a knife on him. However, Officer Meekins panicked, and the white coat you were wearing was soiled with blood. A bloody white coat? You couldn't just walk out like that, so you hid the coat in your locker. Not bad, Pardner. Now then, Officer Marshall, are you ready to tell us the truth? Looks like I underestimated y'all. I hope you're happy now, Mr. Edgeworth. 2 years ago. You were only half as persistent then as you are today. We all wouldn't have to be here now, would we? Officer Marshall, tell the court what you did. All of it. All right. Seems the time has come. I had to do it that day. I couldn't just stand around and let it die. I stole the detective's ID and dressed like him. I planned to take out the evidence. I wasn't expecting Officer Meekins. I knocked him out. I managed to escape, but I knew which areas wouldn't be caught on camera. There wasn't any murder in the evidence room at 5:15. At 5:15? So the supposed victim was really you. But there's only one thing I still don't understand. Traces of a large quantity of blood were found on the floor of the evidence room. If no one was murdered, then how could that be? Officer Meekins managed to cut his own hand. My guess is he's the donor. It was way too much blood for such a small donation. The murder wasn't at 5:15. I had to do it that day. I couldn't just stand by and let it die. Well, first of all, let me point that out. That's got to be the Sl9 case. Right here. When you say it, you mean... Do you even have to ask, Pardner? The Sl9 Incident. 2 years have passed since that case was closed. It was going to completely end with the transferal that day. Not if I had anything to do with it. That incident's not over. Well, what did you hope to accomplish by sneaking into the evidence room? When a case is closed, only that case's lead detective can look through the evidence. I wanted to have a look at it myself one more time. No matter what. No matter what the cost. I don't care what anyone says, partner. That case is mine.
Officer Marshall wasn't in charge of that investigation. Why does he care so much about it?
That day was my last chance. That's why I stole the detective's ID and dressed like him. I planned to take out the evidence.
Why did you disguise yourself as Detective Goodman?
If I didn't make it look like Goodman was carrying out the evidence transferal, I'd be arrested for stealing evidence, which wouldn't get me anywhere.
So you did it to fool the security camera.
And the detective's ID card? I stole that the morning of the incident.
So that really was why Goodman started filling out the lost item report.
I returned his ID card. I left it on the floor in the prosecutor's office parking lot.
The ID card I found was left there by Officer Marshall. So essentially, you managed to succeed despite your lack of foresight. I'm on the camera and killed the real detective.
What do you mean, partner?
I mean the fingerprint-activated lock, of course. No matter how well you disguise yourself, you can't change your fingerprints. Under normal circumstances, you wouldn't have been able to open that locker yourself.
Yeah, that's a big question. Who left the locker open?
But he could because a rubber glove just happened to get stuck in the door. That means Detective Goodman must have opened the locker before Officer Marshall. I don't think Goodman was killed at 5:15. I think he was killed at 4. And then dragged out.
Expecting Officer Meekins to walk in. Oh, whoop. Never played Phoenix Wright before, by the way, just enjoying being a viewer of it.
You pulled a knife on Officer Meekins and tried to drive him off.
Let's just say I was a little surprised. I only planned on being in the evidence room for no more than 5 minutes. I didn't think anyone would actually come in during that short time. Officer Meekins surely is a 1 in a million type person. Mistaking a detective for an intruder and demanding to be shown his ID.
I have to think a little more about his raise this year.
When did Edgeworth get so much influence?
Anyway,
he threw himself up at me and I ended up cutting him slightly. Sorry I had to turn out this way. With me knocking him out and everything.
By the way, what happened to your knife?
Oh, you mean this one?
I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I cut a man with this knife, and I'll use it to shave my beard. Excuse me.
So you knocked Officer Meekins out and
managed to escape. I knew its areas wouldn't be caught on camera.
So you did your research beforehand.
Was it going to the desert unprepared? Don't live long, partner. I didn't think it would make a difference, though. The security tape is erased every 6 hours. If all had gone as planned, no footage would have been left.
However, you bloodied your coat in the struggle with Officer Meekins.
If someone was in the security room when I came out, the jig would have been up. I opened my locker and stashed it in there.
What was Officer Meekins doing during that time?
What else? He was sleeping like a baby.
So what you're saying is on that day,
there wasn't any murder in the evidence room at 5:15.
Ow. But the blood found at the scene certainly indicates the crime took place.
What are you, blind? The victim shown in that tape is me, and I'm not dead yet, partner.
So you stole the evidence from the locker.
Actually, no, I didn't.
Why not?
When I opened the locker, the evidence was already gone.
But we found it smashed on the floor. And the glove, and the knife, and... It's still missing, Your Honor. Detective Goodman's locker was already empty. Someone else stole the evidence. Officer Marshall, may I ask you one thing?
Fire away, partner. It's a free country. Just remember, I'm also free to decide whether or not to answer.
Why did you do this? Is Stealing a detective's ID and injuring a police officer. This is no small offense. Moreover, you're an officer yourself. This will have serious consequences. You can't just be forgiven with a simple cut in salary. Not that salary cuts are ever a valid solution. Like I said, this isn't your case. This one's mine. And I'd do anything it takes to get the answer I'm satisfied with.
The witness has an unusual amount of zeal. Let's hear more.
I can't just forget the Sl9 incident. You know why? No, I don't. It's a bit too real. But that case was solved 2 years ago, wasn't it?
That's the reason the evidence was stored in the evidence room. Oh, look, I have a leftover piece of caviar from when the nice lady was here. I'm just...
Joe Dark was convicted for his crimes. The thing I can say for sure is he deserved his sentence.
I really do, unless you want to put someone on the street these days. Mm-hmm.
I remember that.
I remember that Joe Dark case. It involved serial murders, didn't it?
I don't intend to complain on how it turned out. There's something that still bothers me. Something went down at that trial. Something no one will talk about.
What happened?
I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Why is he so concerned with that incident?
Decline me. This is before the continued stagnation.
Maybe I should present him with what I think is this. I had a feeling he'd wind up here sooner or later. Everyone involved here is related to someone in this case. Better take another look at those files.
Let me take a look at that evidence that she brought me. Where was it? Here.
Close. Perpetrator Joe Dark, serial murder, sentenced death. Victims Edward Jones. Neil Marshall! A relative? Lana and Emma were witnesses. The head prosecutor was one such word. Hold on! Maybe I should have read that beforehand. Right here. I just can't let these go. You know why? Specifically on page 2. Neil Marshall. Officer Marshall, I think I understand. I think I know why you care so much about the Sl9 incident.
Sounds like you've been sipping too much cactus juice, partner.
I have the Sl9 incident file here. The name Marshall is mentioned here. In a list of murder victims. Neil Marshall. Are you related to this man? Neil Marshall?
Yeah, I'm sure you heard the name. 2 years ago. He received the same lousy prosecutor award you got.
What? A prosecutor? You must be talking about the King of Prosecutors Award. Now I remember. The prosecutor Neil Marshall. He handled the Sl9 case before I did.
That's right. He was killed. And the case fell into your hands.
But what's his relation to you?
He was my brother. Okay, you know what? You're actually a really handsome man. That is your hair. I take it back about that being a do-rag. He was investigating murders with Damon Gant, the deputy chief of police. The group of detectives I was a part of worked under them. We were desperate to prosecute the killer. Joe Dark. I think he looks better with his hat on, in all honesty. My brother fought Dark and was killed. That was the first time Dark left behind any evidence. That was all we needed.
He was arraigned and incarcerated. The case was finally closed. At least, according to the public records. What do you mean? My brother couldn't have been killed by Joe Dark. I knew my brother better than anyone. No one could have beaten him in a fight. And that's it? That's the reason for your insane actions? There's more to my brother's death than what the records say. No matter how much you try to hide it, you can't fool me. Well, at least one thing's for certain. Now we know what happened at the police department on the day of the crime. It was the last day the Sl9 incident could be reopened. Not satisfied with its resolution, Officer Marshall planned to steal the evidence. Disguising himself as Detective Goodman, he entered the evidence room. Officer Meekins confronted him, surrendered him unconscious, and fled. Yes, this mystery has finally been cleared up. No murder took place at the police department that day.
I don't think that's true.
The things that happened by chance never cease to amaze. At exactly the same time as the murder in the prosecutor's office, the fake murder was going on at the police department. Chance? It's got to be more than that.
So if no one was murdered at the police department on the day of the crime, that means the murder in the prosecutor's office parking lot was the real one.
Which in turn means only one person could have committed the crime. Chief Prosecutor Lana Skye. Damn it. But wait, a verdict wasn't reached in yesterday's trial. Which is why we examined the incident at the police department today. But
there's only one reason the defendant was not convicted yesterday. There yet remained the mystery of this simultaneous murder at the police department. It seems to me that boy's got the draw on you, Pardner. Shut up, Marshall!
All these mysteries at the police department have been resolved, no doubt about it.
Our sole murder took place at the prosecutor's office. The only suspect is Lana Skye. The testimony of one Angel Star is completely incontestable. If you have a response, make it a single word or less.
Word. I rest my case.
You want one word? I got it for you, and it starts with an O.
Never mind. Seems the trial has reached its conclusion. There's no room for doubt. Well done, Mr. Wright. Thanks to you, I didn't need to waste my time disproving the alleged murder at the police department. There's no doubt what I proved today is true. The apparent murder on the security camera's tape really was fake. But I didn't realize I would end up proving Lana guilty.
Now then, time for the verdict has arrived. The court finds the defendant...
Hold it! Your Honor, wait! Emma! The defense has an objection! A scientific objection! Right? What do you mean, right?
Mr. Wright? Are you this girl's guardian?
Your Honor? Oh, in a sense. Please, Your Honor, all I'm asking for is a minute of your time. Please, hear me out. Mr. Edgeworth, please. I don't want to leave any loose ends. You want a minute? I'll give you 3. I was kind of in shock. I mean, finding out the Sl9 incident referred to the Joe Dark killings. Now that she mentions it, the names of both Skye sisters are in that file. But that's when I figured it out. I mean, what Officer Marshall was trying to do that day. So I knew his fingerprint had nothing to do with the crime. But that left only one thing. The other handprint. You mean the traces of blood found on the Detective Gumshoe's locker? But no fingerprints were found on it, right? No, but I figured if I examined it scientifically, it'd sure find a clue. So I ran over there and looked at it again. So did you find something? No. Huh? Sorry. Guess I'm not much of a scientific investigator at all.
Is that all?
Please don't be mad. I'm just a high school student. And I'm just an attorney. But Mr. Wright, those traces of blood are the only clue we have. If we can't find something wrong with them... Please, Mr. Wright, you're a professional. If anyone can save Lana, it's you! Me? Oh, boy!
Time's up. Now then, Mr. Wright. With regard to the incident at the police department, does any reasonable doubt remain?
It appears that defense is still troubled by their other blood mark. Looking at the floor plans, the handprint was discovered around here. Is there a problem with this? Mr. Wright! I'm sorry I can't be of more use. But still, if you can't find anything wrong with that blood mark, Lana will be...
Please answer my question, Mr. Wright. We don't have all day.
Yes, Your Honor.
Objection! Edgeworth is a secret king for sure. Oh, no.
What could be wrong with the handprint on Detective Gumshoe's locker? Could there be something I'm missing?
I object.
This handprint left at the crime scene clearly shows a contradiction. The only thing that seems clear is your grasping, Mr. Wright. You've been staring pretty intently at those floor plans. Tell me, is there a problem with them? Yes, this is strange. Take a good look at these floor plans. Something is missing. Missing?
You mean something that hasn't been drawn on there?
Yes. Something that, when drawn, will completely change the meaning of the blood mark.
Let us pray the defense isn't simply trying to buy time. Very well, Mr. Wright.
With all this evidence here, there's got to be something I can use.
The question is, which item can prove something is missing in the floor plans? Blue Badger! What about that piece of plywood?
The Blue Badger! Mascot of the police force! Defender of truth, guardian of proof.
Explain yourself, Mr. Wright.
Please take a look at the floor plans at the crime scene. The badge. I did it. I killed him. No, the blue badger was blocking where the handprint would have been. So that bloodstain could have been there before Marshall or Meekins even got in there. They wouldn't have noticed it.
So
watch what happens when we put him in. This is where he'd be dancing at the time of the crime. Well?
Well, what?
Huh? That's right. As long as the Blue Badger is dancing here, it would be impossible to place a handprint at this spot on the locker.
What? Why are you getting affected by that? So that means... Exactly what does that mean?
It means it can't be done.
What are you saying?
Blood traces were undeniably found on that locker. Don't look at me. I didn't put it there. Mr. Wright, think through it scientifically. Emma, on that afternoon, Officer Meekins was the one who put the Blue Badger in the evidence room, right? He put it down. It would be impossible to leave a handprint on that locker. So that must mean the blood mark was left there before the Blue Badger was brought in.
Just one moment. I'll not allow such far-fetched balderdash in my courtroom. Ow. I actually slammed my desk on accident. You're proving his brother wasn't beaten in a fight. It's Attourney all along. Oh my god.
It may sound far-fetched, Your Honor, but it's the only possible explanation. On February 21st, the police department's evidence room, blood was spilled not once, but twice. But how? One time was captured on this tape, taken by the security camera. Officer Meekins cut his hand, from which the trivial amount of blood fell. The problem is the other time. Someone bled prior to the struggle shown on this tape. It had to have been Detective Goodman when he was really murdered. That's ridiculous. I refuse your absurd claim. Except I can prove it. He was killed there and then taken to the prosecutor's basement. The murder portrayed in the security tape has been proven to be a fake. However, that does not explain the blood mark found on the locker. So then, assuming the murder you purport has really happened, when did it take place? I demand you show the evidence that proves when it occurred. When did the first incident occur? To summarize, the defense claims that prior to Officer Meekins being cut by Jake Marshall, who was posing as Detective Goodman, the other incident took place in that evidence room. That's right, the blood mark on the locker proves this. Very well, then tell us. When did the first incident occur? As Mr. Edgeworth said, proof must be presented. Proof that shows when the murder took place. There's only one piece of evidence that can show that. Now then, will the defense provide as present evidence? The records! Right here, at 4:20 p.m. There's a whole 20-minute gap before Miles Edgeworth shows up. If it took place inside the evidence room, then the killer would have had to enter it. And in order to do so, an ID card would have been required. An ID card? Oh! The ID card record! Officer Meekins brought the Blue Badger panel into the evidence room at, let's see here, 4:50 p.m. If the crime scene took place before that time, then it would be 4:40 p.m. Miles Edgeworth! Just what have you done? I never would have figured you had the nerve, boy. Drop the act, witness. It doesn't take a lot of thought to figure out it couldn't have been me. Nope, I ain't getting it. I'm afraid I don't understand either. It's clear from the luminol blood test that was there. However, when the second crime took place, both Officer Meekins and Officer Marshall failed to notice the blood. That means the blood from the first crime was wiped away by the real murderer. It would have had to have been 10 minutes. I would have had to just 10 minutes to murder the victim and carry his body away. Clean up the blood. Unfortunately, that's physically impossible. That would mean the crime must have been taken place before Edgeworth entered the evidence room. Let's look at the chart again. There's only one other card number remaining. All 7s. Talk about a lucky number. But wait, that doesn't make sense. How could Detective Goodman have entered the evidence room? Since there's no record of his card being used beforehand, he must have entered along with the real murderer. That's the only plausible explanation. He went in with all 7s. Mr. Edgeworth, please look into this ASAP. Find out whose ID number is 7777777. The only 7 too many, Your Honor. Unfortunately, I'm unable to look up the owner of that ID card. At least at present. What? Explain yourself, son. The ID number 777 belongs to someone with a rank of captain or higher. Someone who's so-called executive officer. We don't have the authority to inquire such a person's identity. That's ridiculous! Just how? I'm not finished talking, Mr. Wright. There's one situation in which we can be granted such authority. And an official charge filed against the executive is accepted. An official charge? You're all alike, aren't you? With your cover-ups and your forgeries. This is how a prosecutor's office operates. I take pride in my work, Officer Marshall. I would appreciate if you'd keep your slander to yourself. Slander, is it? Okay, let me ask a question. Yes? No, not to you. To her, the defendant sitting over there. My own little executive. Lana? Don't be stupid! She's been charged with murder. course we looked up her ID number, and it's not all 7s.
Don't play me for a fool, partner. That's not what I want to ask. All I want to know is one thing about that incident.
The Sl9 Incident.
Just answer me this, Chief Prosecutor. In that trial 2 years ago, did you really only use legitimate evidence?
Do you need the witness to repeat his question, Chief Prosecutor? I heard him fine, Mr. Edgeworth. 2 years ago, I was in charge of the prosecution for the trial. At the time, we felt powerlessness of the law. At least, I did. Lana, I became a prosecutor in order to suppress crime with the law. Before I realized it, we were the ones being suppressed by the law.
Defendant, just what are you saying?
I'll ask you again, Chief Prosecutor.
During that trial 2 years ago, did you really present all the evidence in court? Can you look me, an investigator in crime, in the eye and say that you did?
Chief Prosecutor, you didn't. I don't have to, Officer Marshall.
Why won't you answer him?
Drastic crimes require drastic measures. That's just the way it is. We did what we had to, in order for him to get the verdict he deserved.
But Lana!
Even if it involved forging evidence.
They may have just killed an innocent man. See? That's what I'm talking about. No. No! Order! Order! Order!
Lana's remarks caused such a stir that the chaos in the courtroom could not be quelled. The conclusion will have to wait until the following day.
Oh. Oh, man. So, was Edgeworth not aware of the falsified evidence? Because he was trying to clear his name, but it doesn't look like that's going to be what's happening. Well, for the folks on YouTube, I guess we'll have to find out in the next episode, when we begin the 3rd day of investigation, leading to the end of the crime. Till then, take care, and see you in the next episode.